Welcome back to the Hydrogen Fuel Cells Europe, here at the group exhibit, how it used to be called, not anymore this year. We will continue with the next guest and do an interview about how to scale up sustainable systems with Emerson Automation Solutions. Please welcome on stage the Director of Strategic Sales and Sustainability, Arthur Gosling. Yes, thank you for joining. Dear audience, have a seat, grab something to drink, prepare some questions if you have, or just listen and enjoy. Thanks for being here, Arthur.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting us.
Let's start. Who is Emerson? Can you elaborate?
Emerson Automation Solutions is a global engineering and technology company. We're US-based out of St. Louis, Missouri. We have about 86,000 employees, 200 sites, and we have 21,000 active patents at the moment. So we split our business into commercial, residential, and automation solutions. And today, in Hall 13, right across from here, we're representing the automation solutions business with a cross-business unit exhibit where you can find from field instrumentation to control systems and to software solutions, everything you would need to automate and then scale up also your hydrogen plants, your processing plants, and also transportation plants. So yeah, we're a global engineering and technology company that has now put a dedicated focus on this renewable space in terms of hydrogen.
You just mentioned you just started to focus on sustainability, or since how long is this going? Of course, it's a long time, I guess, but what are the efforts you put into recently?
So effectively, Emerson has been around since 1890, and if you think about automation as a whole, our aim is to become anyway more energy efficient and emission efficient over time. It has been for a while. It has been in past processes and refineries and rigs and everything before. It was all about conserving energy and being more efficient. But now with these new applications that come into the space of renewables, that come into the space of power to liquid, and come into the space of hydrogen production, the focus is on producing it in a more, from the ground up, in a more environmentally sustainable way, via electrolysis, pyrolysis, or reforming with carbon capture. And so in this realm, Emerson is now focusing with a three-pronged sustainability strategy. We've appointed our new Chief Sustainability Officer, Mike Train, who's been a long-standing part of Emerson for 30 years as Chief Sustainability Officer. And he's driving a transformation in our company to focus on three areas. So we have greening of, greening with, and greening by Emerson. And effectively, greening of is looking into our own manufacturing sites, our own footprint, scope 1 to 3 emissions, and doing a lot of internal work. So we're setting targets for carbon reduction on that internal front. That's the greening of piece. The greening with is how do we shape policy locally or globally, and how do we work with institutes, for example, the ZVEI, the NAMUR, or the VDMA, Power to X for Application Working Group, in order to define best practices so that we can be more successful together, quicker in this transition to a more emission-free economy. And the greening by part is displayed in our booth here. So using our existing products and also getting feedback on what do we need to adapt in our portfolio today to be able to serve these new technologies, these new applications. So that's what the greening by piece is about, and that's what we're here for mostly today.
It's really interesting also how you cover all the different stakeholders through the principles, or the three principles, or most are like the production side, partners, maybe not, or that's more the inside.
Well, I think it's abundantly clear to everybody here today that we can't do this ourselves. We need to work together as society, industry, and politics, and that's why we see that as a necessary step. Right?
So now that was a short overview, but let's dig deeper. What do you do exactly? Maybe explaining it to somebody like me that is not coming from the industry, that has a different background. What do you do Emerson Automation Solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we bring solutions to the market that allow the OEMs who build electrolyzer modules to build them in an efficient, automated, and digitalized way. For example, pressure, temperature, level, flow measurement, control elements like valves, isolation valves, control valves. And also, after we've measured, we need to compare with a control system, either PLC-based or DCS-based, an execution system that decides, okay, this measurement reading is telling me that my pressure is at 5 bar, actually it should be at 7 bar, so I need to do something, I need to change something. So then our valves and regulators and automation portfolio come to play and adjust the process to close the loop of measurement, control, and action. We have these field 1 or field devices, layer 1 devices in a way, and the control system that then takes the necessary step inside the plant is that level 2 kind of automation, the control and safety loop automation. And then when we think about not only one installation, but how the gas pretreatment, the water pretreatment, the gas treatment, the electrolyzer, all the balance of plant, how all of these modules kind of work together, they each run on their own control and need to communicate with one another. We need to be able to create that bridge in terms of the operational technology, the data architecture, that these elements all speak to one another so that you can actually run the plant with a control system. And of course, also embedding safety loops into that so that we can be safely operating these new pieces of equipment. Then taking it a little step further, if you have one large site installed already, okay, great. But maybe you're an end user that operates several sites across the globe and you want to have a visualization or a dashboard of the kind of your installed base of your fleet. Let's say you have 5 times 100 megawatt factories across the globe. And now you're looking to look at some critical data points around those factories so that you as a central maintenance decision maker or a central operating manager can take action if needed. And so that kind of higher level fleet management solution is also part of our portfolio that we've piloted in other industries and been deployed in other industries, for example, the chemical industry predominantly, and are now bringing into this renewable space because we've seen that the time when projects move from lab to pilot scale is done, right? We're looking now to move from pilot to commercial scale. And commercial scale means there's somebody who needs to know how are all of these assets doing and do we need to act? And that information comes from our field devices, through our control systems, all the way to the fleet management systems.
Makes so much sense. Now I'm like, oh, okay, now like everybody needs this from a control point of view, or from a safety point of view, but also to be able to measure, because without measurement, you don't know how you're running the business, and it's also part of being sustainable and more efficient how we work, and this is what you provide, the way I understand it.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you maybe, you already mentioned the scaling up, so if it's not only one plant, but several plants. But what types of customers do you have? Who needs this? Now I'm going to be bold and be like everybody in the field, but can you elaborate a bit more on that?
Well, different solutions for different types of customers, I would say. When we're talking to an OEM, they may have a specific problem around a measurement point or a control point that they haven't solved yet, that they maybe have reliability issues with. We can work on that in terms of the hardware side of things. When we talk to EPCs or end users, the focus is much more in terms of project certainty, on CapEx control and efficiency. So keeping the timeline and making sure that everything is connected. So that's what I would say. Our types of customers are segmented into OEMs, EPCs, and end users. And OEMs are more on the fundamental automation technology piece of it. And EPCs and end users worried about the CapEx and end users about the OpEx. So having that insight once the plant is running.
Okay, different focus depending on the client need. Okay, so the title of this session or this interview is Scaling Up Sustainable Systems. So when we talk about scaling up the business, what is the role of automation?
Okay, so role of automation is to, when we take a project that was scoped at 5 megawatt to prove the technology, and now we're going to 100 megawatt, or let's say we're going from 20 to 100, depending on the project, that means a factor of 5 times more electrolyzer capacity. Yeah. Does that mean that we need to spend 5 times as much on automation as well? I mean, Probably not. If we work together and we sit down and look at the P&ID, look at the control architecture, look at the way that the project is built, we may have a chance to, in a factor of 5 times scaling up, with a factor of 3 times the automation spend, we can already cover that and be more resource efficient in terms of what we're actually building and spending. And to give you a very simple example, do we need to have 5 times the amount of cables? Can we work perhaps with wireless measurement points? If the plants get bigger, some of these measurement points are not accessible. We need to be able to still get the readings and maintain the devices. So we have a wireless solution working with a gateway that can take up to 200 devices per gateway. We put, let's say, 4 or 5 of those into a large 100 megawatt installation and cover some of those critical measurement points, having spent way less on cabling than if we would just take the initial project and scale it up times 5.
Okay, makes sense. So is also in this field or in this area and process the digital twin a topic, or what is the role?
Yeah, it's a topic, and I mean there's a multifaceted definition of digital twin, if you will. There's online, offline, static, dynamic. I mean there's all kinds of different ways we can define a digital twin. A digital twin is in end effect a model that helps us before the project, during the project, to keep the timeline, to keep the costs, and then to simulate how the different puzzles of the piece interact with one another, so that we can save time on commissioning and we can just have a greater playing field in order to enact changes in the digital twin that's running in parallel to the actual process plant, so that we can model the changes we would like to make before we actually have to do them and see if there's any adverse effects that we wouldn't have anticipated. For example, in electrolyzer projects, the water purity is always very high importance. If we wanted to, do a partial stroke test on a valve or do something that would compromise water purity, if we have a possibility to simulate that first and see the effects of that before we do that in the actual running plant, that's a great benefit that you can get from a digital twin, for example.
But would you say it's always worth to create a digital twin or work with a digital twin, or does it depend on the size of the project? And if so, when do you think there's a benefit of digital twin?
Good question. So I think on the smaller end of the spectrum, we can work with first principle analysis. We can do, let's say, physical modeling in MATLAB or Simulink or otherwise to get insights into like a 5 to 10 megawatt scale range. But when we cross that 100 megawatt mark, it has to be a bit more sourced from the real data, and then I think a digital twin makes sense. But even so, we have a unique opportunity now because these are new projects, incremental projects. They're not retrofits, they're not expansions to a site, but they're really new projects, so we have a chance to make them born digital, and I think we should take it.
So from the very beginning, if possible.
If possible.
Okay.
And you can advance, right? You can go from, like I said, it's a model that can come in different gradients.
Can also scale up your digital twin, basically.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Maybe to the audience, are there any questions so far? Anything you want to know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
mesmerized.
We'll be right over here at B54.
Yeah, they're very close here. So. Okay, then another question from my side. It's the first time you're here at the Hydrogen Fuel Cells Europe. Have you been to the Hannovermesse before?
Yeah, we've exhibited at Hanover for many years, mainly in the discrete hall. So also today we're in hall 6, which is for discrete automation. You'll find our fluid control and pneumatic solutions there. This year was the first time we're exhibiting in hall 13 because we see, like as mentioned before, that the time has come from not from lab to pilot, but from pilot to commercialization. And so that's why we're here today, to support all of our customers and partners in the hydrogen space.
We're happy that you're here. Maybe the last question from my side, where do you see then the growth potentials for the future? Where is it going, the market, from your point of view?
Yeah, I think the hydrogen market has an undeniable future in terms of renewable production, both low carbon and no carbon production. I see that we should replace molecular use cases first, and there's a good study done that hydrogen ladder in terms of effectiveness of where the renewable hydrogen can be used. I think we should guide ourselves on that. But then I also see a large emerging and upcoming potential in the form of the hydrogen derivatives that have now come from renewable hydrogen, the methanol, the sustainable aviation fuels, and the ammonia plants that we're going to have to build to convert hydrogen into a shippable form. So I think we shouldn't limit our view only on the hydrogen market look, but also hydrogen and derivatives, or hydrogen derivatives and other decarbonization vectors, for example, carbon capture. So
that's a perfect ending. If you want to discuss it further, please go to the booth. It's right across from the public forum. It's quite a large one. There's a blue balloon over it saying Emerson, so I feel like you can't miss it. Thank you so much for being here today, Alfred Gosling.